Today we're checking out some creepy glitch in the Matrix stories. If you didn't already know, a glitch in the Matrix is typically a strange visual or audio anomaly that can make you feel a little confused. Some even believe that these strange glitches in reality are evidence that this is all a simulation, but I'll leave that decision up to you. This morning I had an experience that inspired the creation of this video. It was so strange and so bizarre, I just had to share it. So let's check that out first, then we'll get into some other stories. My girlfriend and I were asleep and were violently awoken by the sound of the front door being opened. We both shot up, looked at each other, and jumped from the bed. Bleary-eyed and ready to fight whoever just busted down my front door, I ran out of the bedroom. I looked towards the front door, and there's nothing. The door is still shut and locked. She checked the Ring camera, and there was nothing. The cats were completely calm and relaxed. One was sleeping, one was casually walking around. There was nothing. Nothing happened. But both of us woke up at the exact same time to the loud sound of the deadbolt being clicked open. I asked her if she heard that noise, or am I just going crazy? She responded with, "Yeah, someone just opened the front door." We both just heard the exact same thing, but it didn't happen. During the winter months, the deadbolt lock makes a much louder sound than usual, so it's extremely recognizable. We both woke up to the same sound and described the same noise. She goes on to tell me that she had a terrible dream about a murder in a hotel, and I told her I was having a dream about someone breaking into our home. So for whatever reason, we both had terrible dreams that ended at exactly the same moment to the same noise. This was such a weird and creepy experience that it inspired me to start writing this script and to collect all of these creepy glitch in the Matrix stories. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoy these. So like, subscribe, and let's get into some more creepy glitch in the Matrix stories. I had this crazy vivid dream in 7th grade. I dreamed that there was a white cargo van parked outside of my house. A man got out, walked to my house, broke in, then went up to my brother's room and ended his life. I woke up freaked out. It was around 3 a.m. I couldn't go back to sleep, so I went to the kitchen, turned on the light, and a few seconds later the headlights of a white cargo van outside flipped on and sped away. I had a dream about being on the phone with my great uncle, who I hadn't seen in years. Later that day, he called me and wanted to talk about the same thing we had discussed in the dream. It freaked me out. When I was younger, my parents took me to see The Polar Express. It was a great movie. This was sometime around summer, and I thanked her for taking me to the movies. She looked at me strange and said she had no idea what I was talking about. Later in the year, around Christmas time, we went to the movies. I sat in horror as we watched The Polar Express on opening week, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. I had a dream a long time ago of my ex-girlfriend, before I ever met her. Red hair, hazel eyes, standing in the corner of where 3 streets meet. She was carrying a purple luggage bag and crying. It turns out that thing I saw, 2 years later, when we broke up, that was the last seen of her. Funny enough, several years later, I now live at the apartment building where that corner is. I smoke in the back to avoid looking at it. I only vaguely remember this incident, but one night, very late, both my grandparents and I were woken up by a loud sound. My grandmother swore it was a shotgun. My granddad said it was a car backfiring, since there was no one nearby who would be shooting. We lived pretty far away from anyone, but near a highway. They bickered over it for a bit and then went back to bed. About 15 minutes later or so, the phone rang. It was my aunt. Her husband had been shot with a shotgun by a neighbor just 20 minutes before. The thing is, they live 7 states away. There's no way we could have heard that, but the timing matched up perfectly. Taking the trash out at night. Super remote area, so I know for a fact we were the only ones here. I was getting close to the road, and I very clearly heard, "Help me," from a female voice. Even knowing there's such a slim chance of there being another living person around, I felt like I should look around and check just in case someone was actually hurt and not me just hearing things. I took about 2 steps in that direction when I heard what sounded like a giggle from the same voice. I instantly turned around and ran back up the driveway. Anyone who actually needed help was not going to be giggling at me. I once read a post on a forum where someone remembered vividly that his brother had broken his arm as a child. The entire family denied this ever happened, even the brother himself. They later found a photograph of this brother with his arm in a cast. My friend Sarah and I were in a nightclub where she had way too much to drink, where all of a sudden she had an overwhelming urge to tell a stranger that her leg hurts. All a bit strange, so she ignores it until the feeling to tell the guy doesn't stop. So she walks up to this guy and says, "I know this is crazy, but I've got a huge urge to tell you that my leg hurts. I know that's crazy. Again, I'm sorry." He burst into tears. Turns out his dad had just died, and they made a pact before that if there was an afterlife, he would get a message to him, saying a totally random phrase that they had both agreed upon, so that there could be no mistakes. That phrase? "I've hurt my leg." I was 7 years old and having a sleepover at a friend's house. Her nanny was reading us a bedtime story, and out of nowhere, I suddenly felt panicked and told them, "I think my cat just died." Lo and behold, when I got picked up from her house the next morning, my parents broke the news to me that my cat had been hit by a car and died the night before. Jump to about 15 years later, and I'm having breakfast with a friend down the road from my house after staying over at her place the night before. Midway through saying something, I suddenly felt overcome with grief, sadness, something, and I told her I had to leave because I had a feeling my dad just died. On the drive home, my mom called me and simply said, "You should come home right now." I somehow knew, and I'll never understand how. I was 13 years old at the time when my dad was a coal miner. He worked third shift, known as the Hoot Owl shift, which was midnight to noon. As soon as he got home around 2 p.m., he slept until around 9, got up, had dinner with us, and left for work. My dad was always pretty gruff, and constantly yelled at us if my younger brother or I made too much noise and woke him up after getting home from somewhere, which, as an adult, I totally understand now. So one day I did something to wake him up. I forget what. Anyway, he calls me back to the bedroom, and I'm expecting to get yelled at, but instead he looked at me and said, "It's okay. Come over here and give me a hug." Now, what 13-year-old boy wants to go hug their dad? I kind of squirmed a bit, and he followed up with, "What if something happened to me?" I just laid there all grizzled and tired. I didn't hug him. That night there was an accident in the mine. He saved everyone in his crew, including the one person he went back for. His was the only death. And I'm convinced he knew it was going to happen. I'll never forget his eyes that day. If someone asks you for a hug, give it to them.